Okay, in my last video, we covered all of the new features on the brand new 10th generation iPad and the new M2 iPad Pro, but I wanted to actually dig a bit deeper than just surface level information and talk about the iPad lineup in general right now. And talk about not only what iPad models are worth buying, but also talk about what models I recommend, some key differences between these iPad models that Apple really didn't tell you about, and also some mistakes to avoid when ordering the iPad or maybe even some of its accessories. So let's start with the low end and make our way up. And of course, that means starting with the iPad. Now, I think this new iPad is a great starting point. At $450, I wouldn't call it expensive, but it's definitely not cheap either in the way that the older $329 iPad was. It's a great place to start to see what sort of features you value, and then from there you can decide if you want to spend more money or actually spend even less money with something that should still hold up pretty well. So at first glance, the regular iPad looks like a cheaper version of the iPad Air. It's $450 instead of $599, and both of these products mostly have the same design. So they have the same 10.9-inch display, it looks like they have either the same or very similar cameras, and I think the regular iPad even has one advantage over the Air, and that is the front camera placement. In fact, it has an advantage over every other iPad that Apple sells right now because it's the only iPad to have that front camera in landscape orientation. That's probably the best placement for the camera if you plan to use it in landscape mode, and a lot better when you're using the iPad with something like the new Magic Keyboard Folio or any of these keyboard cases out there. Now, I don't have this product yet, so you can take what I say with a bit of a grain of salt, I guess, but I think $450 for this product, it's reasonable. I know a lot of you are upset about this price point, but I still think it's reasonable. You have to remember, when the iPad originally launched, it was $500. They kept that old design, and that was the reason why it was so low in price point, but updating it with a modern design, charging $450 for this. This is not an expensive tablet, and even though it did make some weird decisions, $450, it's still a good price. It's still a good price. Now, it does have some downsides that you need to be made aware of. I'll cover that in just a second. But hey, if you want an iPad, if you want to use it as a tablet, or maybe if you plan to even buy that new keyboard folio case for it, this looks like a good value compared to what I think is a very hard sell on the iPad Air. That starts at $600. That's expensive, and it still starts with the same 64 gigabytes of storage. But that doesn't mean the Air doesn't have advantages, and there are some notable differences that Apple really didn't tell you about, and you need to know this before you buy this iPad. First of all, while the display may be the same exact screen size and brightness as the iPad Air, it is not the same quality. The display on the normal iPad is still not laminated directly onto the display, meaning there will still probably be a slight air gap, and the display lacks the anti-reflective coating that is found on the more expensive iPad Air. Those two things together mean that if you plan to use your iPad outside or in just bright sunlight or direct sunlight, you may notice more glare, and it may be something you might want to avoid if you plan to use your iPad a lot in those situations. Furthermore, the display on the regular iPad still lacks P3 wide color support, which may be really important to you, especially if you plan to use your iPad for any task where color accuracy is really important, or you just want a slightly nicer looking display. And don't forget, this regular iPad, even though it has USB-C and can be connected to an external monitor, it will still lack the Stage Manager feature that is only found on iPad Pros from 2018 or newer, and that new M1 iPad Air. Now, by now, I'm also sure you're aware that the base model iPad is weird. You probably watched my last video. If you didn't, you should, but yeah, it's weird. It has a USB-C port, but lacks the magnetic charging connection, so if you plan to use an Apple Pencil with this device, you have to use a first-generation Apple Pencil, and you have to pair and charge it with a USB-C to Lightning adapter. Furthermore, there is no smart connector on the back of this iPad. Instead, it is on the side of the iPad, and this also allows for a unique new accessory, the new Magic Keyboard Folio. And it looks like it's going to have the same key travel as the Magic Keyboard and the same trackpad, but also have a full row of function keys, something the Magic Keyboard does not have. And it also has a pretty cool design where you can separate the keyboard with the cover still attached if you want to protect your iPad and still use it in tablet mode. You can basically just leave the keyboard behind and still have the cover on it. It's also a cheaper keyboard with the scissor switch mechanism and a trackpad at $250 compared to Apple's Magic Keyboard for the iPad Air or the 11-inch iPad Pro at $300. Now, you also need to be made aware that for the Apple Pencil, there is another route you might want to go if you're buying this iPad and you're planning to use an Apple Pencil, you may actually want to consider the Logitech Crayon. Now, this still is going to have a USB-C connection, but it's $30 cheaper than the Apple Pencil, and it doesn't need an adapter. It just has the USB-C port built right in. So maybe consider getting the Logitech Crayon instead of the Apple Pencil, because I just feel like using an adapter or requiring an adapter to use with your Apple Pencil to charge it, it's possible it could get lost. It just sounds like a bad experience to me. So I feel like Apple Pencil users should probably just steer clear away from this iPad unless you're just really on a budget. Okay, so after all that, do I recommend the base iPad? Well, like I said before, I think it is a good value. It's $150 cheaper than the iPad Air with the same storage and the same design. Furthermore, if you add on the new keyboard Folio, it comes out to $700. Now, if you take that same iPad Air at $599, pair it with a Magic Keyboard at full price, that comes out to $899. So there's definitely an audience here for this new iPad for users that want either just a tablet or for users that plan to use this as a laptop/tablet hybrid with that new Magic Keyboard Folio. With that being said, I think if you plan to use an Apple Pencil, like if you're an artist or planning to handwrite notes in class a lot, I think the second generation Apple Pencil is such a better experience than the first gen. And with this weird new USB-C adapter, it looks like at this point, you might be better off going for that M1 iPad Air. You might as well spend more money if you're going to use the Apple Pencil. And if you really want something like the iPad Air with second generation Apple Pencil support, but the price is still too high, which I agree it is too high, my biggest recommendation when looking at both of these iPads is to check Apple's refurbished store first. Now, this won't always be the case or a recommendation, but if refurbished models are here, if they aren't sold out, you can get an 11-inch iPad Air right now for $469 refurbished. It literally has the same A14 chip as the new iPad, but without all the weird USB-C Apple Pencil stuff going on. For $20 more for that refurbished model, to get the magnetic charging of the Apple Pencil, to get the slightly better display, for $20 more, I feel like that is definitely worth it. Furthermore, if you wanted something like a ProMotion display, which is only found on the iPad Pro, you can even still find 2018 iPad Pros refurbished for that same $469 price point, which will still have a better display than the base model iPad, and again, have support for second generation Apple Pencil, so definitely check out that Apple refurbished store before making a purchase. I'll make sure to have a link to that in the description below. Now, if you need something even cheaper, you may want to still consider the 9th generation iPad. Apple still sells that on their website for $329, and as of the making of this video right now, it is down on Amazon's website to $269. Yes, it doesn't have the new design. Yes, the cameras aren't that great. And yes, it still has a home button, but practically speaking, it still has good performance with the A13 chip, and honestly, has a better pencil experience than the new iPad because at least you don't need an adapter for it. It has the lightning port built into the pencil, you charge it there, you don't need an adapter. So if you can find this 9th generation iPad at a good price, I still think it's actually worth getting if you can stomach having the older design. And honestly, I don't think having an older, like having just a little bigger top and bottom bezels, it's really not that big of a deal. All right, but what about the big expensive iPad Pros? Is there really anything new with them? Well, this is going to be easier to cover because it's such a minor update. The new M2 iPad Pros have 3 new features. The first is it gets a faster M2 chip. The second is it gets Wi-Fi 6E. And finally, the Apple Pencil 2, working with the M2 chip, now supports a new hover feature where you can kind of see like a preview of where the Apple Pencil is going to land before placing it down. And you can even do things like resizing brushes before the pencil tip touches down on the display. So you might want to take that into consideration, that specific Apple Pencil feature, if you're an artist or someone who just uses their Apple Pencil a lot for like work and you need like precision. Honestly, that feature, I know it's like a small feature for most people, could end up maybe being a compelling reason to upgrade if you're on an older iPad. Like if you have an iPad Pro M1, definitely don't upgrade. Like it's not going to be worth it just to get the M2 chip and the Apple Pencil hover. But if you're on like a 2018 iPad Pro, you've been waiting out like a few upgrades, you want that hover feature, hey, it might actually be worth it. That's it though. Everything else with this M2 iPad Pro, it has the same features as the M1 iPad Pro. So for most people, is it worth it? Well, again, not to upgrade from an M1 iPad Pro, but if you are waiting for an update for a while, and even though this is a small update, you may want to pick one up. Because if you need or want an iPad Pro right now, I'm guessing we're not going to see another iPad Pro update for like the next year. So like if you need an iPad Pro, if you want it, if you're waiting for this update, if you're following the leaks and rumors, hey, don't feel bad about getting a new iPad Pro. It's not a major update, but at least it's going to have the latest performance inside of it. Now, if you are buying the iPad Pro, you do need to know a few things. First of all, if you want the amazing mini LED display, you still need to get the 12.9-inch version, as the 11-inch iPad Pro still just has an LCD display. Now, on both iPad Pro models, there's also RAM differences on the storage tiers. So if you buy the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte version, it comes with 16 gigabytes of RAM. But if you buy the 512 gigabyte storage tier or below, the iPad comes with 8 gigabytes of RAM. Will you notice the extra RAM on the iPad Pro? Maybe. It depends on your workflow. If you plan to use like those Pro apps, maybe you'll notice the increase in memory. But I feel like for most people, you shouldn't buy based on the higher increase in memory. You should only buy those higher tiered memory options if you actually need those storage options. So if you need 1 terabyte on an iPad Pro, I don't know who you are, but if you need it, then yeah, go get the 1 terabyte iPad Pro. But I wouldn't probably make the recommendation, at least right now, sitting here with the information I have, based on memory. I don't think it'll make a big difference. Okay, now should you go for something cheaper like an M1 iPad Air instead of this Pro to save money? Well, I actually don't think so, because I think if you're the type of user who wants an iPad Pro, you probably want features like the faster 120 Hz refresh rate, but you also probably want a fair bit of storage on your device too. And I'd recommend at least 128 gigabytes of storage if you're going for an iPad Pro. And thankfully, the minimum amount of storage on an iPad Pro is 128 gigabytes of storage. Meanwhile, the cheaper M1 iPad Air only ships with 64 gigabytes of storage. And if you want to upgrade the storage, you can only do that with a 256 gigabyte storage upgrade. And that comes out to only about a $50 difference between the cheaper M1 iPad Air and this new M2 iPad Pro. So for me, if I was spending my own money, I'd rather take the 128 gigabytes of storage on the M2 iPad Pro and get some of those Pro features rather than just going with the M1 iPad Air. That's me personally. You'll have to decide that for yourself. But just like with the regular iPad, you may find a better deal if you don't care about this small upgrade by going for a refurbished iPad Pro or shopping at current retailers right now for a discounted M1 iPad Pro. I actually found the 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pro with 256 gigabytes of storage for $200 off on Amazon right now. And honestly, if you don't care about that Apple Pencil hover feature, you'll probably be better off saving money and picking up that cheaper M1 iPad Pro if you can find one. All right, but yeah, that is basically all of the important information I found out right now about this new iPad and this new iPad Pro. I really hope this video was helpful for you in helping you make a purchasing decision, no matter what iPad you're buying or if you're deciding to skip the iPad. And if you are buying an iPad or are looking for a deal on one, consider checking out my affiliate links in the description below. And if you like this video, hey, give me a like. Don't forget to subscribe to see my full coverage of both these iPads next week. If you want to wait for a full review before you buy one, I'll have one hopefully pretty soon. And yeah, thanks again. I'll see you in the next video. I'll see you in those iPad unboxing and review videos, right? You're going to watch those. Thank you.